Good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar of Solid Edge Design Configurator 2024. In this webinar we'll discuss all the enhancements and features that have been added in the latest version of Solid Edge Design Configurator. The agenda for today's webinar looks something like this. We'll start with the user interface changes, and then we'll take a look at the new ways to add data in the input field. Then we'll take a look at all the CAD features in terms of model actions. We have some new model actions this year for Design Configurator. First one is the code remarks and code commands. Then we have Eval Expression, and then we have group start and group end. And finally, we have for each loop and next loop. So first, let's take a look at user interface. The first one is an option to copy-paste inputs in the assembly document. In the previous version, you could not copy-paste input fields, but now you can do that. The advantage of doing this is it saves your valuable time. If you have multiple similar inputs, you can simply copy-paste those input fields and make minor changes. Next, we have the option to suppress and unsuppress the model actions at the model level. So as you can see from the screenshot attached here, if you select the conveyor layout mode demo, it gives you an option to suppress all the model actions at the same time. In the previous version, you were able to do it individually for each model action, but now you can suppress all the model actions at the same time. In the option for individual suppression of the model action and input fields still remains the same. Next, we have the option of pointing out the exact location of the where the configuration has failed. In this case, we have a failed configuration, and the error message states that the field F is not defined at line 1 and column 7. So if you press the arrow right here, it takes you to the specific location where the configuration has failed, and you can make the change. In this case, it looks like set B input field F in a model action has been failed. Next, we have the model action categories. So now all the model actions have been categorized into 4 different groups. First one, we have workflow. Then we have the parameters, drafting, and modeling. So under workflow, we have most of the new commands like code remarks, code command, eval expression, subgroup, group start and end, for loop, and next loop. Under parameters, we have the option to set the face style, material properties, and variables. And under drafting, we have the option to update the draft. And finally, under modeling, we have the option to place part, some CAD commands, feature suppress, replace or remove the model, rename, and save the model. So now in this latest version, each and every model action is very nicely categorized, which saves you some time to find each and every model action in a single group. So first, let's take a look at the data and rules. If you remember in the previous versions, the only ways to add inputs into the input field were to manually enter the value or copy paste from an text file or an Excel file. But now we have some added ways to add the data. So first one is the option to add the data using expressions. Here we have an example where the user has added integer range from 1 to 100 using the expression. Next, say for example your data is in form of some Excel or text files. You now don't have to manually copy paste the data. You can directly point the location of that Excel file and specify the range. The range cell can be automatically detected by the software itself. Same thing for text file. You simply have to point the location of the text file and then the software can either auto detect the field separator, or in this case you can simply specify it if you know this the field separator. So let's take a look at this command in action. So first, let me do a couple of things. I'm going to add some images here, which I'll be using later on. So here I have these 3 images of knobs. I am going to add this in my embedded resources. In the second step, where we define the input fields, let me add an input field named L. Now if you select the input field under this data source drop down, let's first take a look at the option calculator. In here, you can simply go to expression and specify the function that you're looking for. A really nice touch here is that we have an option to look for the search bar. So I can simply search for integer with a range function. So I can go to the data option, list, and I'll say integer with a range. So here, let's take a look at first, let's specify the integer range starting from 1, and the stop range is going to be 10, and the interval is going to be 1. So we get 10 different values. You can also validate to make sure everything is running right. If I change my render style from text box to drop down, in the last step, if I set the drop down, I get all the values of integer from 1 to 10 with a spacing of 1. Similarly, you can we'll take a look at some other ways to add the input fields is using this external, that is external file. So let's point to Excel file that I already have. This Excel file named as values, and then I can simply use this option that's called as auto detect the range. So the software will automatically detect the range for that specific Excel file and import values. So in this specific Excel file, I have pointed the location of all the images that I have uploaded in my embedded resources. So when I changed my render style to radios and go to the last step here, I get a really nice image stating the names. The first one is small, then the next one is medium, and the third one is large. And finally, the last one under the external is the data file, which is in the form of a text file. So here I have fields value. As you can see, I have 2 field values, value A and F. And like I said, you can let the software automatically detect the field separator, or you can do it manually, which I'm doing here manually. That is semicolon, import values, and we get 2 values, values A and F. If you want to take a look at in the last step, it looks something like this: value A and value F. So these are some new ways to import data in your input fields. Okay, so now let's take a look at all the new CAD features. In this year's release, we have 8 new model actions. First one is the code remarks, then we have code command, eval expression, subconfigure, group start and end, for each loop and next loop. So now let's take a look at all of these model actions in detail. So the first one is the code command. This action acts on any model type. The code command the code remark command is basically going to give you an option to add remarks. These remarks can be added in references column as well as the expressions column, and since these are just remarks, there is no effect on the model that's happening. Next, we have code commands. Again, this action acts on any model type. This action can be used to control the action execution workflow, which will allow you to jump out of a loop, exit a conditional node, or stop the execution of the model actions. Under the references column, you can select the specific command. So we have 6 different types of code commands. We have message, we have exit loop, exit OK, exit fail, model, and restart. And under expressions, you can define the execute condition or the command value. So what does each of these code commands mean? So first one is a message. In here, you can display the message. Since this message is similar to expression, it has to be in the quotation mark or you'll get an configuration failed error. And since this message is an expression, it can also contain variables. This message comes up or is displayed as a pop-up window. As you can see from the screenshot attached here, we get the message something like this. The height of the model has been set to 30. Next one is an exit loop. The exit loop forces the exit from a loop cycle even if the expected number of loops have not been reached. Next one is exit model. If you want to stop the execution of the current model actions and move on to the next one, that's when you would use this exit model code command. Next one is exit OK. This forces a global action execution on all the models. Then we have exit fail. So exit fail again is somewhat going to help you to display an error message, but the way it is displayed is slightly different. It forces a global action execution stop on all the models, and the system closes the action as if there was an error. And the way it displays an error is something like this in the screenshot here. It says the execution has been stopped because the input value h can create an inconsistency in the model. So this is just an example, and again an important note here is that this error message should be in terms of should be within the quotation marks too. So that was code commands. Next one is group start or end. Again, this type of action acts on any type of model. This is very useful where a series of actions must be performed only when a certain condition occurs. And the advantage here is that it avoids you specifying the same run conditions for each action. Now, under reference column, you can specify the name. So here we have name as condition. And the expression column defines the condition for executing the actions contained in that specific group. So in this specific group, we have a cat command for solid edge, and then we have place part by expression. And within this group will only be applicable when this condition is met, which says get selected count is 0 and the input conversion t is set to something. So this is just an example screenshot. Next, we have for each loop and next loop. Again, this type of action acts on any type of model. So when will you use this for each loop? When you want the same set of model rules to be re-executed a defined number of times, and that's when you'll use this for each and next loop. A really important thing here to note is that if you're using a for each loop, it has to end with the next loop. So as you can see from the screenshot here, for each loop of this row, I have ended with the next loop here, and for each row of this column, I have ended with the next loop here. So these two code commands, or sorry, these two model actions go hand in hand. So under the references column, you can define the item variable, and under the reference column you can define the item variable, and under the expression column you can define the loop execution criteria. So let's take a look at all of these commands in action. So let me go back to Solid Edge and open the specific file. Okay. So here I have a chessboard assembly. So first let's take a look at the code remarks. So it's very easy to add the code remarks. You simply have to come to this the add model tool under workflows. You have the first one is code remarks. And like I said, you can add code remarks in both reference column as well as the expression column. So you simply double click and add any specific remark that you want. So in this case, let's say I want to add the mark mount block over the selection. And once the code remark is added, it turns in the green text, something like this. Next, we'll take a look at the code commands. That is, again, go to the workflow, and the next one is code command. You also have the option to rearrange any specific model action. You simply select the model action and rearrange it like this. So under references, I'll select a specific code command. I'll select exit fail, and I want this exit fail to display an error message. Like I said, it has to be in quotation marks. At least one block must be selected. Now, when do I want this to run? In a specific group. So let's take a look at the group start and group end. Again, I can always rearrange my group. Simply select the group, drag it and place it at the location you want. In this case, I'll rename the reference to verify because I'm trying to verify everything. And then under expression, I'll select my count. So I can use expressions here. So again, under expressions, I can go to functions and search for a specific expression or a function here. So I want my get selected count to show up, which is under this models, and I can say get selected count. And when I want this to be valid, when my get selected count is equal to 0, you can run a validation check, so everything looks good. And each group has to end, so you have to add in group end from workflow. You can add a group end, something like this. So now when you go to the last step, if I don't select anything and just hit create, it gives me that execution message which says that at least one block must be selected. So this is how you can use the code commands and groups to run in a specific fashion. Now let's take a look at for loop or for each loop. So now I'll go back to the workflow and specify the for each loop here. In here, I'll keep the item as it is, as the item variable. And under expressions, I'll specify the get selected models. So get selected model will be the model that I'll specify based upon what I want. So I'll change my item type to number, go to expression, and from here I can go back and specify the function I want. So the function I want is get selected model. And hit OK. So that brings in the function here. And now when I want to run this for loop, I want also to place a part for a specific block that I select. So for that, as usual, I can go to the modeling and hit place part. So under place part, I'll browse to the specific part that I want to place. And this part is nothing but a simple block, something like what we have already used here. So this is a block part that I want to place. Now where exactly do I want to place this part will be based on the location. Again, instead of specifying the exact location, we can go and specify it using function that is called as get origin. So I'll say get origin, under models. In here, instead of model, I'll change the model name to item because that's what is shown right here. Inside the for each loop, it says item, and place it at the origin. So here, all I'm doing is just specifying the location. Also, I have the option to copy paste the relative position for X, Y, and Z. So this becomes 1 and this one becomes 2, and I want to move it by 100. So now I've specified this part, and now what I'll do is I'll select a face style. So I'll go to parameters, select a face style, and let's say for example I want to paint this red. So I'll do Rosso, and this is going to be when the condition is true. And like I said in my previous in the presentation, that for loop has to end with the next loop. So when I go here under workflows and select next, it ends this loop. So now if we go to the last step and select multiple blocks, 2, 3, 4. So I've randomly selected all these blocks, and if you hit create, it places a red block on top of it. So something that I missed here to do was I did not mention in the properties that I would like to apply face styles to the last placed part. So you have to check this box to make sure that you apply face styles to the last placed part. Hit OK, and now when you go back to the first step here, you can simply select the blocks that you want. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I select all these blocks, and the loop will run each time I select a specific block. So when I hit create, it places a red block on top of the selected block. You can always restart the configuration to select multiple blocks, which will make sure that the loop is still running. So I've selected 5 more blocks and hit create. So you'll see that 5 more red blocks will be placed on top of the selected blocks. So let's take a look at one more example of loop here. So let me open that here real quick. In this one, I have this chess made assembly, and now I'll be creating a chessboard here. So I want this place part and specific set of face style in the way this is defined to run each time I select my 2 inputs, and the 2 inputs are going to be rows and columns. So I'll go back to step number 4 and add those for each loop. Go to workflow, specify for each loop. Now in item, I'll change the item name to row, and under expression I'll specify an integer range. Since it is going to be a number, my item type should be changed to number. And now we'll take a look at how you can define the range. So I'll say start from 1 and go to number of rows defined by the user in the input field. And if you hit update expression, the software selects the specific expression for you and displays it right here. And once you hit OK, this application can be used, or this expression can be used. So this is for row. I would like to place one more for each loop for the column as well. So I'll go to for each loop. Here I'll specify column, and again in a similar fashion use the range. So again specify column, change item type to number. The range starts from 1 to the input field for columns. Update expression will place the list expression here, and like I said in the previous slide or presentation, that this for loop has to always end with the next loop. Under workflow, specify two different next loops to finish this nested loop and end the loop. So the location of this loop is different, so I can simply slide it down, and this completes the expression. Now when I go back to the last step, I can specify the number of rows. So let's do a 4x6, which is the default, and the software, as you can see here, starts creating a 4x6 chess assembly or a chessboard assembly. You can restart and change this to 8x8 and hit create. So it is going to add 4 more rows and 2 more columns to this existing assembly. So this is how you can use loop to create the specific assembly that you're looking for. And here it is, the 8x8 chessboard assembly. Okay, so now let's take a look at some new CAD commands that were introduced in this year's release. So we have a zoom fit, model select, and start command. So zoom fit is basically going to fit your model in a specific window. Then you have model select that selects the model specified in the expression column. And then we have start command, which has a bunch of different command IDs using which you can align your assembly in a specific format. Say for example, if you want to align your assembly in the top view, then the ID for that will be 32813. So entering all these IDs, you can add a specific command to that CAD model. So let's take a look at this command in action. So again, I have the same chessboard assembly, and the location where you can find this CAD command is under modeling. You have this CAD command. Now, for this example, I'll select the model select command, and this one I can use the existing functions to select a specific part. So here I'll be using get last place function. And the next CAD command that I want to play or use is the top view and align my assembly in the top view. So to use that command, I'll be using a start command. And this command, if you remember, to align the assembly in the top view, the ID is 32813. So once we have this CAD command, now the way this configuration will take place is that we will select specific blocks, and the blocks will be placed on top of it, and then these CAD commands will be enabled, that my last placed model will get selected, and then my assembly will align in the top view. So let's take a look at this in action here. So I'll go to this last one. Now in the last step, I'll quickly select multiple blocks here, 2 and 3. And as soon as I hit create, the software will place the red blocks on top of it and select my last placed model, and then align my assembly in the top view. So this is how you can use CAD commands and the new CAD commands that were introduced in this version. Next, we have the eval expression. Again, this model action can be applied to any type of model. So basically what eval command does is it creates a local variable and then assigns an expression to it. So we can create a local variable which can be used within a loop to compute, and then we can update the expressions on each loop cycle. In the reference column, you'll select the variable name, and in the expression column, you'll select the expressions that you want to compute. So next we have subconfigure model action, This subconfigure model action works on sub-assemblies that contain the configuration rules. Say for example you have a sub-assembly which already has defined configuration rules. So you can use this subconfigure model action and then use the specific input fields to define in your step 5. In this we can set by expression, and then to define the specific parameters you can access this call subconfigure panel. So the list of parameters needed to configure the assembly can be either imported using the import option as you can see from here, or you can manually enter it using the add fields command. So this is the new subconfigure model action. Next we have part placements. So there are some enhancements in the part placement model action workflows. So inside the place part model action, now you have the option to use the last selected or last placed models. The UI has slightly improved as compared to the previous ones. So let's take a look at how this place part enhancement works in the latest version of Solid Edge. So here I have an assembly, and let me go to step number 4. So here I already have a part place, and let's see how it works. So if I go here and just hit create, it places a bench somewhat in this location, right? Now if I go back and let's recreate this and let's place a bench at this corner right here. So to do that, I'll simply copy paste and edit the existing expression. So when I go to edit existing expression, I don't have to use these inputs. So there's a new option called as the matrices. So inside this matrices, you have a bunch of different target position option placements. So I can place a part based upon the floating bench which I have here, or the base part which I have here. So let's use a base part. And inside the references, I can select it using this option and set to corner. Just one remark that this corner command has to be in the quotation marks for it to work right. So once you hit OK, I have edited a new part placement command, and when I go to the step 5 and hit create, a new floating bench will be placed. Something like this. So this is the new part placement enhancements in the latest version of Solid Edge 2024. So these are all the improvements and enhancements I had for today's webinar. So I'm open to any questions that you might have regarding the Design Configurator.